It is the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, rejoined by Mick Gillispie, who was away last week on assignment, and Kevin Reichard. Mick, first, good to see you again.
Hey, great to see you guys again. Missed you last week. It was a little bit weird not hanging out with the two of you and talking to our baseball universe. I missed you guys, but great to be back.
We missed you too. So, but we're back in force for as long as we can. A warning to everyone: my personal internet here has been really flaky. So if I disappear, it's not because I don't love you all. It's because I'm physically unable to be part of this anymore today. So we'll go as long as we can and see what happens.
Kevin, while you're here, let's take advantage of it. What's the latest that you've heard?
Boy, the latest I heard is that Major League Baseball is working awfully hard to start a season on the 4th of July weekend. That's still the target. And what I'm working on right now actually is a story about to what extent the owners want to stress safety to the players. That'll be the first battle. The second battle will be some sort of payment system for the season, which is a huge issue. So right now the safety is an issue, and you are seeing a whole bunch of rules out there set up for the season. No spitting, no high fives, trying to minimize contact at all levels. It's going to be really interesting to see what the game looks like once it happens. And I do think it will. I think we've seen announcements from several states saying we're fine with pro sports as long as no one can spit at each other, basically.
Don't know if either of you saw this. Just watching from last week tonight with John Oliver about the Bundesliga getting restarted in Germany. And the head coach for one of the teams leaves to go get some toothpaste, and now he's out of the quarantine, so now he's got to get retested. And I hope folks learn from what Germany is going through in order to restart their season.
It's been really interesting watching all these sports launch. I watched some of the Darlington NASCAR racing, and it was fine. I didn't really miss fans in the stands. I watched some mixed martial arts. Again, UFC seemed perfectly violent to me. And then I watched some pro wrestling. Boy, you really can see how fake pro wrestling is when there's not a bunch of fans in the stands. I mean, it's not even – they were so blatant about not whacking each other at times. I mean, it was like watching an old 60s movie with a fight where the punches end up a foot away from each other. So I'm sure baseball will be fine, but it was just funny to watch pro wrestling to see, okay, it really is fake.
That's our wheelhouse. That for me and Mick, we're both big fans.
I love wrestling. I grew up watching Vern Gagne and All-Star Wrestling and, Jesse Ventura and all those guys. So I'm not anti-wrestling at all. In fact, I can't wait for the crowd to get back. So it really does look like the spectacle it is.
Mick, are you feeding your sports fix at all?
I try my best. I mean, I did catch some of the NASCAR. I always thought that NASCAR would be the first one to come back because really I don't think that you have to have fans at a NASCAR race. I mean, you're in a car going 200 miles an hour. Like, no, they play very little factor in what happens, if any. Wrestling, though, I mean, it's like you said, Kevin, it looks very, very fake without the fans because you can't have that, the heel does something and then you flash to Jesse and he's just like, like that shot, it's just gone. I think AEW wrestling has done a better job than WWE as far as figuring out a way to make the best out of a situation without wrestling. Because WWE is just seems like it's just, I don't know. At least AEW has some of their wrestlers hanging around ringside, so they have that extra shot. But I miss sports. I haven't really watched much. I mean, I've been doing other things, and I would love to to have I don't know, the pro rodeo. I mean, I would watch that. I've always been a fan of the rodeo on television. I've watched the Michael Jordan documentary, which I think was well done, other than the fact that I saw nothing about Michael's family. Then he have a son that played basketball in college. Didn't see them in there at all, which was, I guess, he has editorial control, but still it was good. It was like something. It was like, oh, we got this. But not having baseball this summer, it's just been so odd. I mean, I have more time to spend with the family, which is great, but it's an anomaly. I just don't think this will ever happen again, and it's an eye opener. It definitely is.
Kevin, you've been covering what different ballparks are doing without baseball. This is something in the autumn, in the winter, minor league stadiums can still figure things out, saying, what can we do to bring people out? What are other ways we can use our field? And teams are now figuring out the same sort of creative solutions currently.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's doing, dine-in, takeout food. You've seen some teams doing drive-in movie theaters. You were seeing some drive-in concerts. You've seen Pensacola doing disc golf with Bubba Watson. You will see, although it's not public yet, you'll see one team opening up their clubhouse as an Airbnb.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, the opening, yeah. We've all seen enough clubhouses to know that'll be an interesting proposition. Although this is a pretty high-end clubhouse.
Yeah. Some clubhouses would work better than others.
But
yeah.
It's all a matter of doing things that are high-profile enough to remind people you're still in business, and to raise some revenue in hard times. And these are decidedly hard times. So I think you're going to see a lot more imaginative things come forward as well, especially as the realization hits that the season is not likely to happen.
Hey, I got to tell you, too, I was the last one to see minor league baseball not coming back. I just never – I don't know. I left spring training. I just thought this would be a 2-week thing. I figured we would, kind of get a handle on what the situation was and we would go back to normal life. I just never saw minor league baseball not playing this year, and I guess I'm an optimist, I mean, I just think like, how could you not have a minor league season? But at this point, I'd say it's slim to none that we're going to play. I'm like the last guy on that wagon, but they're having enough problems trying to get everything worked out for Major League Baseball. And I can't see any scenario at this point where minor league baseball would be played. And that's tough. And I honestly, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it. I don't think it's a guarantee that Major League Baseball is going to be played. Now, I think they're moving towards it, but there's a lot of issues. I talked about it last time we did our show. The players' union is not going to be easy to negotiate with through this. And, they feel like they've done, they've won negotiations in the past. If I'm the owners, I'm not going to pay these guys full price when I don't have fans there. We've all taken hits. I mean, look, I'm furloughed right now. I'm out of work. Jesse, you're not working either. I don't know what your situation is, but, there's a lot of people like me that are out of work, like 30 million of us, So I'm adamant to the players that they're going to have to take a hit just like the rest of us. And it might be a big hit. I'm taking a big hit. You guys take a big hit because it's what's good for the country. I hope that what prevails, But there's no way that the owners are going to make money this year. I just can't see it because you're not getting concessions. You're not getting, you're not getting the ticket sales. And on top of that, like knowing from doing some sales for the Smokies, we're sending money back or pushing it towards next year. So I'm wondering to myself, like with the major league teams, like where's the revenue going to come from? So, I mean, it's almost like this season's a wash in a lot of ways, but I would love to see the players and the owners get together and do what's best for the country because it really does lift morale to see that NASCAR race or to watch the wrestling or to see the pro rodeo, and I'd love to – I'm not an NBA fan, but I'll tell you what, I would love to see some NBA basketball right now. I'd sit there and watch that, some hockey, give me whatever, right? At the end of the day, what it's all about is doing what's best for everyone in this situation. I hope baseball does that, but I'm not overly confident, guys. I'm just not.
Yeah,
a lot of things would have to fall into place. You're absolutely right, Mick, that it's not a clear-cut path to playing. Economically, Major League Baseball is going to lose, according to the owners anyway, about $4 billion if there's no play at all. So bringing back play will help some. They make about 60% of their revenue on broadcasting versus 40 to 45%, really 40 on game day revenues. So that 40% would be gone no matter what if there's no fans in the stands. And I don't think anyone envisions them being in the stands until September, October at the earliest. So we're looking at a wash season financially for Major League Baseball. We are looking at the players going to get some pressure to cut back on their demands on revenue. But then again, this battle is more about what happens next year with the next collective bargaining agreement. This isn't about this year. This is about the future of the game as envisioned by the owners. It's about salary caps. It's about hard salary caps. It's about, how much of the revenue the game players should have. And it's about how you determine those revenues in terms of baseball spinning off things like broadcast networks outside of the baseball team. So it's going to get very complicated very quick. People aren't going to be happy about a lot of squabbling. People are going to say, well, I'm unemployed. Why are you guys fighting over $1 billion here? Can't you equitably divide up $4 billion in a year? And so it's going to be fascinating to watch this move forward.
I do think, Kevin, that whole idea that there's so much more to it, that this is the owners taking those steps toward the off-season negotiations that we know are coming. If this was just about the money, or if this was just about understanding how to keep everybody healthy, and not just the players, but the coaches, the personnel, the media people who are going to have to be there, and the people who take care of whatever fields they play on. Because you're reporting most recently, I see on ballparkdigest.com, hey, here are the latest governors to say we will allow empty stadium baseball.
Yeah, in California and New York, oddly enough, where the pandemic's hit the hardest. And the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, said the same thing, but they just set a record for positives. So I'm not entirely sure the players are too darn eager to be playing there as of right now. But boy, if you get California and New York in the fold, that's 6 teams right there in Major League Baseball. Then you got some states that haven't been as hard hit, and you got like Washington State that's on the way down as well. There's a viability to this. Whether or not it's viable in the middle of June remains to be seen, and whether it's viable with the launch of play in July remains to be seen. I still think a team like Toronto is going to open their spring training complex, so I don't think it'll ease up to that point. So it'll be interesting to see who plays where and under what circumstances.
Those two intertwined issues, the issue of the money and the issue of how is testing going to be handled, everything like that, each of those is complicated in their own way. And if you only had one to discuss, the players and the owners talking about revenue, or the players and the owners talking about testing, you still have a bit of a negotiation to figure out all the logistics and how everything's going to work out. But you've got them both plus. So we've got conversations in store, and probably late hour conversations and fluid situations all the while leading up through June.
Right. I think things will keep changing week to week. Quite honestly, I think at some point they'll re-examine just staying in Arizona and Florida. I think that once they realize that getting teams across the board back in play is not going to be a viable option. So you look back at the training camps.
Traveling, right? Traveling is a dangerous thing. And if you set up empty stadiums in Arizona and in New York and in California, there would be travel included. So they just might want to go as simple as possible. But They really are examining every single possibility they can. And then the report of the possibility that they're examining is getting reported by somebody.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of people.
Yeah, I was surprised that they switched from and we don't know, but I mean, just the rumors that they switched from the spring training site plan to the home ballpark plan. Because I thought the spring training park plan to me was the best one. I really liked it. Like, I thought, look, okay, you're going to slide this universal DH in. I'm good with that if we're in spring training, because you're mixing American and National League teams anyway, right? I've spent all those years in Arizona, and I know, like, it's convenient. Like everybody has a stadium. They're all close together. And, for the situation that we're in, it would be kind of fun to just say you got the Cactus League and you got the Grapefruit League. Have a season, a shortened season, and then those two play in a World Series. I mean, who cares, right? Let's do it. I mean, it doesn't have to be National and American League. I hope that, what I'm afraid of is that every time we give an inch, they take a mile, right? Like, I'm not for a universal DH. I'm just not. I like, and I grew up like you, Jesse. Like, we grew up in Maryland, like Baltimore. Like, we love the DH, and then all of a sudden you get it. You learn the game better, and you appreciate the National League game, and you just don't want it to change, because the minute that they take and put the DH in both leagues, we'll never see it again. We'll never see baseball played the way that it was really meant to be played. The more that you watch the NL game, you realize, like, this is pure baseball right here, right? I'm afraid that I'm going to say, hey, I'm in for this, and then we'll never see it again, right? But let's just, for the sake of conversation, and so that people don't get mad at me for agreeing with the universal DH, just for this year, no tricks, I'd be down with that. Like, and then just do it that way. I mean, I know the World Series matchup would be odd if it was like, the divisional opponents, in the same league playing. But for the situation that we're in right now, that would be, to me, would be fantastic. And I think that it would be easier. You're dealing with the travel, how are you going to get the players back and forth and all that. The other thing that we know now that we didn't know at the beginning of this is that the players, the likelihood that they're going to die of COVID is minute. Now, the manager, and the support staff, and some of the broadcasters, and now that's different. You get up there in age, and your chances of dying go way up. I mean, we know that now, right? But the players themselves, a very, very small chance that they're going to die from this. It's just the way that it is, so that's a good thing. We know that, wear the masks, wash your hands, the social distancing, and we're cognizant of it now, so we have that education that we didn't have when I left spring training, or at least maybe not the universal awareness of that. But I think that the easiest scenario would be playing the spring training complexes. And it's like, no one's talking about that anymore. Now it's like going back to the cities. And to me, that seems like it's, with the travel involved and everything else, that's the toughest one. That'd be the toughest one to pull off at this point.
Mick, that idea of the universal DH, I think that there's a lot of fears from the players in their negotiating position, that the owners are taking this current situation, and a lot of what is getting negotiated is what they would like to have in place down the line. As Kevin mentioned, the salary cap. And there are other different things. Minor League Baseball, in trying to figure things out that would be advantageous to minor league baseball, Major League Baseball could very well be using our current scenario to, again, aid what they would like to see in place going forward, 2021, 2022. So there is that concern, I'm sure, from a lot of folks who are anti-universal DH, that if it is installed, that it will continue to be the standard moving forward.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I don't know Rob Manfred personally. He's not a person I've ever met. But I'm just not a fan of a lot of his decisions. Like, I'm just not. Like, and I would not be surprised just seeing the way that he's operated in his time as commissioner, with the juice baseballs and then the denial about the juice baseballs. And then, the situation with minor league baseball right now, where he's wanting to contract teams, and then the way that he's using COVID to win those negotiations, and and then the way that he's dealt with the cheating scandal and everything else. Like, I would not be surprised. And if I was the players union, sure, I would be really, really, I'd be really careful with this guy, because, and then the other stuff about him, that what he did before he was commissioner and how he got the job, like, everything about this guy is it just seems shady, like, just to throw it out there. And I said, I don't know him personally, but I've been around this game a long time, and I know people that do know him. And if I was the players, I'd be really careful. I really would.
There's the whole idea of what is the commissioner's role? what is the purpose of having a commissioner? For a long time, the National League and the American League had presidents who ruled their league with an iron fist. And even before that, when Kennesaw Mountain Landis was brought in, when Judge Landis was installed as the first commissioner, it was just to try to clean up baseball's image, because the public is going, baseball's dirty. These guys cheat. They throw a World Series. We can't trust any of them. Gamblers have their hand in the game. And so he came in, banned guys left and right, just trying to restore some feeling of we can trust baseball again. And if you currently have the feeling that you can't trust baseball, whether it is because of cheating or whatever it might be, then that commissioner in that job of serving the owners, but you can serve the owners by taking care of baseball's image. And baseball's image does not feel pristine.
No, and not to interrupt, Kevin, I know you got something to say too. I just want to jump in on this too, because I was a Bud Selig fan. I really thought Bud did a great job, and he got so much criticism. I loved when he made the All-Star game home field advantage. I loved it because it legitimized the purpose of going out there and trying to win the game. And I was in the minority, and people couldn't get rid of it fast enough, but I thought it was great. Like, everything that he did, you just knew was for the love of the game of baseball. I feel like baseball, and I'm afraid, look, we make our money off of baseball. Like, it's our livelihood. I feel like baseball is like dangerously close to becoming boxing, which was another sport that I loved as a kid growing up, like from the Muhammad Ali's and the Joe Frazier's and the heavyweight boxing, Mike Tyson when he came up, Spinks and, all these George Foreman, all these great boxers. And then you'd watch a boxing match eventually, and you didn't know one guy won, but if it was a decision, that person didn't win. The integrity of the game was lost. And I feel like right now that's where baseball is dangerously close. And that's when Kennesaw Mountain Landis came in. It was the same thing. Here's a guy that's taking over a sport where the integrity of the game is damaged because of gambling and because people throwing games, like this cheating scandal where no players were punished. None. It's egregious. It's egregious to the people that watch the game and love the game. It's egregious to the other teams that play against them. The punishments that are divvied out to the support staff is idiotic. It's unfair, and I love how the players have just thrown these guys under the bus. Like it's angering, because we don't have the protection of some big giant union. We're just normal people that are just trying to go to work every day and do our job, right? And that's what these guys are. There's not one video person that went to work and said, you know what, I'm going to cheat for these guys. They made him do it. And we all know that. And then they talk to us like we're idiots. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and they feel the exact same way. And there's not a lot of arguing going on that baseball is dangerously close to falling into that same spot that boxing is. And when boxing lost the integrity of the game, all of a sudden people stopped watching. And you remember, Kevin, boxing used to be one of the biggest things. You go look at the people, the athletes that made the most money 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they're boxers. You look at it now, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury had one of the best heavyweight fights, two of them really, two of the best heavyweight fights that we've had in decades. And they made money, but it isn't the draw that it used to be. No. Not even close. And I'm going to tell you right now, as far as just the actual spectacle, the fight itself, that's two of the best heavyweight fights that have been around in the last 50 years, maybe more. But because people lost faith and confidence in the sport of boxing, the money's not there anymore. The interest isn't there. And baseball's got to be careful. And I feel like that this commissioner, for one reason or the other, and maybe it's not his fault, because he's always saying, well, you know what, I got the players union this and the players union. Look, yeah, you're probably right. Like, you would have had a big fight and it would have been a big lawsuit. But at the end of the day, you kicking out video room people for a year is not addressing the real issue. guys wearing wires to know what pitch is coming in? Is it the guy's fault that's in the room doing that, or is it the $1 million player that's out there that asked him to do it? And another thing is, I just hope, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I hope that the players realize just how awful it is to throw those guys under the bus, those support staff guys and the managers and stuff, when it was their doings here, that they're getting away with. But the last point is that I'm sure there's one team who's not so worried about this situation of not playing baseball this year. And I think you know who I'm talking about, because it was going to be a long year of a lot of boos and a lot of people that feel like me that were ready to see them in every single market. And so far, they've skated through because of this coronavirus. But what do you guys think?
I actually agree with you. This is going to be a key. And the future of the sport is going to be determined in the next 16 months or so. The next CBA is going to be tremendously important in terms of whether or not baseball remains in its sort of lofty place in American culture. One reason I have for optimism is that the NBA and the NBA, the NFL and Major League Baseball share one similar trait in that both have a lot of owners who really are dedicated to the fans. They're family-owned operations. They are willing to do what it takes to put both a good product on the field and provide a great fan experience. And that's true with boxing. Boxing was, taken over by promoters. It became a very insular sport. But right now you've got a bunch of MLB owners that may not have a lot in common at first, between the Pohlads and the Steinbrenners and Ken Kendricks and, Stuart Sternberg. They, on the surface, they may not have the same characteristics in terms of their business models, but they both have the sort of same commitment to the sport that I think will be key to moving forward. New York's Park Avenue is going to do what Park Avenue does. And they're going to be the loudest proponents for what they perceive as owners' interests over time. But at some point, both sides have got to negotiate. And I'm kind of looking to those team owners in Major League Baseball who have a broader picture than just being a labor lawyer in Major League Baseball offices.
Did you see that Bill DeWitt bought Eva Longoria's mansion?
I saw that.
I think the idea, have you seen this, that the 1-year suspension that was handed down, let's say there is no baseball this year, whatever it might be, that this year would still count as that year for the suspension?
Yes, I saw that. It takes the teeth out of what was already a pretty weak penalty for everyone involved. And there should have been a lot more penalty involved. These guys blatantly cheated. Mick is so right about that.
Turns out we were all suspended for a year.
We're all suffering for the sins of a team that will not be named.
I think I've voiced this to you guys before, but I'll voice this again. I think that one of the chief difficulties in really punishing the Astros and other teams, conducting a thorough investigation into every single person who was cheating, every single team that was cheating, and punishing those teams and punishing all those players, is that unlike college sports where you can hand down the death penalty to an SMU or to whomever it might be, and you'll be okay because other college football programs will rise up. If you hand a death penalty down to a major league fan base, you just can't afford to lose Houston or to lose Boston or to lose whomever it might be as, hey, you'll be ineligible for the World Series this coming year. And then you lose anyone who might want to go. You lose the revenue of the ratings of the people who are buying, and everyone who's interested. They couldn't chance harming a market. And so I really do think that in looking at what they could do and also trying to walk that tightrope of not really antagonizing that market, and Roger Goodell has antagonized New England a little bit, not as much as they think, but a little bit he has. But it's fired them up even more just to try to win, just to spite him. This was different. This felt very different in terms of what can we do that would be hand some punishment down but still leave things in a certain area that fan base remains invested.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted them to vacate the World Series. I mean, look, I just thought it would be that, like that. We don't want to hand out the death penalty, but I mean, look, vacating that World Series. I would love to see all those Astros people with their World Series rings that don't mean anything. Like, I just would, because I got one and I know how, and it's not, I didn't deserve it. I mean, they just gave it to me, which was fantastic. But every time you put it on, you think about all of the hard work that went into getting that. Like, I've been with the Cubs for a long time, in one capacity or the other, and it's like watching that ladder, what it was like when Jim Hendry was there, what it was like when Theo took over, when Tom Ricketts bought the team, when Chris Bryant and Javi Baez got to the major leagues, what it took to get there, the Jake Arrieta trade, like all these things that had to come together. And then, Ben Zobrist is hit and they win Game 7. It's like the minute you vacate that, all those trophy tours, all those people that wear those big rings, it doesn't count anymore, because every time somebody looks at it, they go, you know what, man, it doesn't count. I think that if they're not going to punish the players, I think that is the ultimate punishment. And I know, look, you feel bad for the fans, but there has to be a deterrent. When baseball was going through this in the past, they kicked out Shoeless Joe Jackson just for being associated with the guys that were involved in it, that were the real gamblers. He was one of the biggest players in the game at the time, The punishment that we divvied out now basically says, hey, look, if you cheat, the video guy might get thrown out. Your manager might get fired. He might get fined and lose a couple draft picks. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's worth it.
Mick, it's not just that. It's the warning that was handed out to every other team in baseball that do not criticize this. Do not criticize the Astros publicly. The feeling that could hurt public image of baseball more than a team cheating to win the World Series title. That what we really don't want is any player calling out another team or calling out another player. That is really what could hurt our reputation.
Right. Like, we're all a bunch of sheeple. We have no idea what's going on. We can't sit here and watch this and make an educated decision on what's just happened here, And maybe they're right, Maybe if we just pretend that the Astros didn't cheat, that the Red Sox didn't cheat, then they didn't cheat. Maybe they just we're just, we didn't see Altuve wearing a wire. Like I saw Peter Gammons at spring training, and he's like, well, Altuve didn't have a wire on. That's what he told me. He said, now, like, and I'm going, well, I'm thinking to myself, like, and I love Peter Gammons. I've watched the video. Like, maybe I didn't see the actual wire, but I saw it, like you saw it too, right? Are we changing? Are we really changing what we know because we want it to be this way, or are we changing it because someone's pressuring us to change it?
It's a really good question, because after the PED era, and we'll see if there's anything else going on, what people are trying. Guys still test positive in the minor leagues, with the minor leagues and their rigorous testing. But in the late 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, there was such glorification, right, of the great production and the record-breaking things that we saw on display from hitters and pitchers. And then from the media, when things all started to come out, the full betrayal that people had publicly, and now holding it against players and saying this player will never get into the Hall of Fame. There has always been that feeling of, we must protect the integrity of the game against itself. Whereas the game has always resisted integrity. There's always been players here or teams there who they're never as pure as members of the media might want them to be.
Well, the members of the media, sorry, Kevin, the members of the media, though, I think they've done, you talk about the steroids, I think they've done a fantastic job of holding the steroids people, at least most of them, accountable enough that they can't get into the Hall of Fame yet. And I appreciate that. I don't know that it's an argument that I have with some of the people I respect the most. But I don't want Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Alex Rodriguez and Manny Ramirez. And Big Papi. As much as I like these guys and I think they were great players, they cheated.
Here's where I disagree with you. What if we discovered that a player currently inducted into the Hall of Fame cheated? Do you throw that guy out?
Yes. And I kind of have a feeling there's a few that have gotten in there.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I put my paycheck on that. I could probably name 3 right now.
Right?
Right off the top of the bat.
Guys are in Cooperstown who might have used, but these guys who we have more concrete proof about or we've heard rumors about, we're going to hold these guys out and put these guys in, and it all feels very nebulous to me.
Hey, they didn't get caught. And I mean, and if it ever comes out that, Mike Piazza was on steroids or Pudge Rodriguez or Ricky Henderson or any of these other guys, then I say out. But we know Barry Bonds did it. We know Big Papi did it. We just know. We think that Piazza did it. We think that Pudge Rodriguez strangely turned really big and then shrunk back down again. But I don't know. I don't want to get to the point where we're like, okay, Roger, Barry Bonds and Alex Rodriguez and Roger Clemens, not only did they cheat, but they were just jerks. They were just I don't even want to say the word, but you know the word I'm thinking of. And I'm glad that they're being punished for that, because it doesn't cost you anything to treat another human with respect. And at least Piazza and Henderson and Pudge, if they did that, they were always great guys. And should that be a factor? Probably not. But you know what? I'm a human. So I think that if you can't treat the people around you with respect, then why should we go out of our way to do something for you? I love the fact that they can't get in. Like, it's just kind of like it's like our payback for all those years of just you being unhuman to a lot of people that were around you. Is that a fair assumption, you think?
Kevin, you've been biting your tongue for a while.
Yeah, this is a sport that'll never kick anyone out of the Hall of Fame. This is a game that loves its scofflaws. Gaylord Perry, lovable Gaylord Perry. Joe Niekro gets caught with a finger file on the mound and goes on David Letterman. I mean, this sport will never get rid of anyone in the Hall of Fame because of cheating. Mick's absolutely right. These guys aren't in the Hall of Fame. They are perceived as being jerks to sports writers and other people. That's the issue. Yeah, sure, you can gussy it up under cheating issues, but let's face it, if these guys were lovable rogues, it would be one thing. Roger Clemens isn't a lovable rogue. Joe Niekro, lovable rogue. Gaylord Perry, lovable rogue. And that's the bottom line of this stuff is Mick's absolutely right. How much are these guys liked?
Yeah.
That lovable rogue. Do you know the Babe Ruth corked bat story?
Yes. But Joe, please tell us. Please.
Okay. Here's the way that I understand it. The Hall of Fame is traveling around with its artifacts from baseball history. This great's glove, this ball, this legend's bat, specifically the legend being Babe Ruth. And they're traveling to ballpark with a traveling Hall of Fame show for fans to see. And they go down and they bring it to the players, and they're saying to the players, who here would like to check this out? And the players absolutely are going, yeah, we want to see Babe Ruth's bat. One of them picks it up, has a look at it, looks at the barrel, goes, this bat is corked. And they x-rayed it. And yeah, the bat that the Hall of Fame is bringing around, Babe Ruth's bat, was a corked bat.
Lovable rogue. No one's going to argue that Babe shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I mean, is that really his bat, though? Maybe it was like a pitcher's bat that he just picked up for that time that he came to the plate, right, Sammy Sosa?
Babe Ruth cheated in terms of everything. Babe Ruth didn't care about anybody. Babe Ruth didn't care about the owner, didn't care about, punched out an umpire. This is the man who rules and regulations did not apply to the Babe.
No, but you know what he did do is he took time for the fans. He always had time to sign an autograph. He would take a picture. He The guy we talked about it last show, the guy that caught like his 600th home run, like thought of him as an uncle because, you know, he gave him $20 and a signed baseball. And then every time he would come to Detroit, you know, he would say, he'd hang out with him, you know. He was a human, you know, he just treated people with respect. You know, back in the days of racism, Babe wasn't racist. You know, you see pictures, he's taking pictures with everybody, you know, and it wasn't like that back then, you know, but for Babe it was. And I think that's a part of it. Like, Big Papi's going to get into the Hall of Fame, guys. He's getting in. You know why? Because he's a great guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Bill James has put together all-star teams of the all-time nice guys and the all-time worst human beings just to be like, which team do you think wins? And in the end, he concludes, probably the nice guys clean their clock.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you guys this. I'm going to just jump in on you, Jesse, for a second, and I'm going to throw the question out there. Nicest Hall of Famer I ever met was Harmon Killebrew. One of the greatest people I've ever met of that stature, right? He was awesome. You guys, start with you, Kevin, then you, Jesse. Nicest Hall of Fame type player that you ever met?
I would concur with Harmon. I met him once. Lovely man. And still that, you know, small town Boise guy or Idaho guy. Was that to the end. Just very gracious, very unassuming, interested in learning a little bit about you at the same time. Yeah, he appreciated what he had become in terms of being a famous player and a Hall of Famer.
I have heard great things about my idol, Alan Trammell, although I've only met him a couple of times and never really sat down and talked. The Hall of Famer I've sat down and spoken with on quite a few occasions because he comes in as a Blue Jays advisor, and everybody loves him, is Tim Raines.
Yeah.
Tim Raines is something else. The stories that he tells, he'll sit down and laugh with you. Does not matter who you are, he's got time for you.
And I'm glad he's a Hall of Famer because when he wasn't a Hall of Famer, I was a big advocate for Tim Raines to get into the Hall of Fame because I appreciated the fact that, you know, maybe on surface, you know, the numbers don't bounce out at you, you know. But when you watched him play, his ability to play the complete game made him a Hall of Famer. And I'm glad he's I've never met him before. I've met, you know, some of his teammates, Delano DeShields, Jeff Facero's a good friend of mine. Like they were saying, hey, you know, this guy needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And that meant something to me too, because players aren't going to say someone belongs in the Hall of Fame if they don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. We both know that. They'll tell you quickly who doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame a lot faster than who they'll say belongs in. So I'm glad to hear that because I've been a Tim Raines, Rock Raines fan a long time.
It's so great. The teams that I call games for, it's so fun just asking them, hey, is this pitcher any good? Is this hitter any good? There'll be guys who are top prospects, guys who make the major leagues and are good, who players want to give zero respect to. No, he's nothing. Or the opposite, where they're just raving about a guy. And I'm going, really? Are you sure? No, players have their opinions.
Rain shows the biggest gap between sports writers and players because he made it look so easy. And the sports writers don't have the experience to know how effortlessness does not equal, you know, he was talented, so he made it look easy.
Yeah.
Writers can't appreciate that, the players do. And I would love to see a poll of current players who they think should be in the Hall of Fame, who isn't. I mean, I would assume Raines would be way up there.
You know,
I was going to say.
Go ahead, Mick.
One quick note on writers. I've noticed that, and I have a lot of friends that are writers, so I'm not specifically talking about them, but when I was a kid, I remember Eddie Murray getting ripped by the Baltimore writers for not hustling out ground balls. And I remember my dad saying to me, Eddie Murray's not there to run out an infield single. You know, and you look at his baseball card back then, and he's playing 161 or 162 games, and the writers are ripping him in the paper because he's not running out ground balls. No, they're mad, and you get older, you realize this, you get in this business, because he doesn't want to do an interview, because he didn't like the way he was quoted, and and he just didn't want to do an interview. So there was a grudge that they had against him, and it was like, well, he's not running out ground balls. Like, the writers don't always know what they're talking about. Like, no one's paying Eddie Murray to leg out an infield hit. They're paying him to jog around the bases, in the ninth inning when you're down a run, and driving a couple men, So it's funny that you bring that up, like it's kind of like the writer's perspective on what makes someone good, that they don't always understand, like, the way that someone covers the gap on a line drive is really important to a pitcher because they don't want to give up that hit. Or the way that the timing of someone stealing a base. It's not always about the numbers that go into, well, this guy stole 80 bases. When are you stealing a base? Are you up there protecting the guy at the plate? Because as a runner, like if a left-hander's up and you're on first base, you staying on first base and not stealing second may be helping that guy hit because you give him a bigger hole to hit through, right? Or Mike Trout's the best in the game at this, I think, where you watch it. It's just like he's going to steal on the 2-strike pitch, like there's just so many games within the game. And I always thought that Tim Raines was a master of playing that. And I don't know that it was respected a lot by the writers because maybe they didn't see it.
Well, a knock against Pudge Rodriguez was all you had to do was get a base stealer to first base with Rodriguez catching. And he called for fastballs because that way he could throw you out. So you knew if you could get a base stealer to first and Pudge was behind the plate, that next hitter would get fastballs to hit. All those little things that affect.
Right.
But Kevin, about the perception of the media, the perception of the players, I think it's really hard when you get compared to somebody who's a contemporary, because you're not taken in a vacuum for yourself. And Rock Raines played at the same time as Rickey Henderson, who was better. Rock Raines was one of the greatest leadoff hitters in baseball history, and a fine outfielder and a fine base stealer. And Rickey Henderson was better at stealing bases, about being a leadoff hitter. So because they played during the same era, you could look at Rickey and go, Hall of Famer. And you could look at Rock and say, not as good as Rickey. And what folks didn't realize was just because he wasn't as good as Rickey didn't mean that he wasn't better than however many leadoff hitters, the hundreds and hundreds who had played in the game before him.
And same when he was on those Expos teams. He wasn't necessarily the best player on the field every game. I mean, that was a superstar riddled team, but he was consistent every day, and he also knew his role with the team. I mean, Andre Dawson had a different role than Tim Raines did, obviously, and Tim still performed at a very high level every day, even though Andre Dawson would get on the news with the big home run every 3 days.
As we wrap things up for this week, Kevin, a question was sent in.
Yes.
And this question was about Grand Slams.
Yeah, everyone loves the Grand Slam. And the question was, and in the Baseball Thesaurus, Jesse went into some of the famous home run Grand Slam calls. What are yours?
Mick, do you have a favorite?
Well, when you guys sent that out, the first thing I thought of was reading my good friend Ken Korak wrote a book about Bill King. And for those of you that are watching and you're into broadcasters and you want to read a great book, read it. Ken wrote it. It was his old broadcast partner, Bill King. I used to listen to Bill King back when Sirius Radio first came out. Like, I think that Bill King and Ken Korak, when they were together, one of the best broadcasts in baseball. And I still think Kenny's an awesome broadcaster. But anyway, he wrote this book about his partner, Bill King, who was eccentric and had a lot of weird personality traits and a great guy at the same time, great broadcaster. And in the book, he had like these 3 things that he hated. And one of them was, and I'm talking about Bill King, if you said Grand Slam, you did not say Grand Slam home run because it was redundant, right? It's Grand Slam. We know it's a home run. It's a Grand Slam, So I've talked to other broadcasters about that. And one, I'm not going to name him, but he's like, you never met Bill King? because he said, you say grand slam home run. He goes, you got to beat Bill to get that, So I don't know. Like, look, it's a grand slam. I'm following the Bill King logic because I like Kenny's book so much. If I say grand slam, I don't say home run anymore after it because I just assume that we all know that it's a home run. But I had a game once a couple of years ago. A guy named Ian Rice hit a grand slam walk-off home run. I think I'm going to say we were down 3, and he hit the grand slam to win the game. If my memory serves right, but I just was like going nuts. Like I just couldn't believe it, like nailed the call, great moment, called it, didn't say grand slam home run, just said grand slam, got out of the way. And all 30 people that were in the stands that day doing this, it was like an extra inning game or something. So that's my grand slam moment.
Do you know that a grand slam to walk off when you're facing a deficit of 3 runs, do you know that it has a name?
Yeah, it's a golden home run. Isn't that it?
It's called the ultimate grand slam.
That's it. Ultimate grand slam. Yeah. And that's what happened. I had one.
So I went back, put it in the book. The grand slam, it's funny to me. There's so many terms from baseball that now get brought to other walks of our life, including other sports. Grand slam is a term that baseball took from bridge. And bridge, in contact bridge, if you have a side making level 7 and taking all 13 tricks, grand slam. And then from there, you can think about other things, right? In tennis, you can win the grand slam. In golf, you can win the grand slam. Or if it takes you 2 years, you can tiger slam it. Grand slam came to baseball. It did not originally mean a home run with the bases loaded. It meant a mighty cut. So a batter hitting the baseball was a slam, and a really big hit was a grand slam. So a mighty swing or a tremendous show of offense was a grand slam. It was 1929. Paul Dixon traced it down to the year, the first time that they could find anyone referring to a bases loaded home run as a grand slam. When I went listening through an old broadcast in the 1950s, and there's Vin Scully calling a game, and all they would refer to it was a grand slammer. So anytime they were talking about this grand slam, it was a grand slammer. Yeah, the grand slammer in the 5th inning. I think it's 2 for 4 today with a grand slammer. The classic call to me is Dave Niehaus. I don't think any other broadcaster has a trademark grand slam call like the one that the late Dave Niehaus had for Seattle. Do either of you know that call?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mick. Do it.
I mean, it's like he's talking about a salami sandwich, a grand salami with mustard and rye bread. Am I close here?
Mick, you've got it. Get out the rye bread and mustard, Grandma. It's grand salami time. Love Dave Niehaus. That voice with that enthusiasm and that feel of you just brought you right in to celebrate with him.
Yeah, that's the best one I've ever seen. And there's some really great ones out there. And to pump the book again, Jesse's got pages and pages of them. It's really fascinating reading.
The first player to ever hit 2 grand slams in a game was Tony Lazzeri. Fernando Tatis hitting the 2 grand slams in the same inning off of Chan Ho Park because for whatever reason they left him in to face Tatis again for the second time up with the bases loaded. Grand slams are great. The one that I remember the fondest, even though it happened against me, were in Clinton, Iowa. Now, Clinton at the time had a promotion, and this was a kid's day, where if a batter, and they told you this is our ice cream batter, if the ice cream batter hits a home run, everybody gets free ice cream. And with the kids all going nuts, PA announcer announces, here's the ice cream batter. Bases loaded, Clinton's looking to blow things out, and the kids are cheering for the home run, and he got a hold of one. There was a mass exodus, and I couldn't see it, but I bet you that ice cream, it was like Black Friday when you're doing the Thanksgiving shopping. Oh, I don't know if they ran out of ice cream or what, but all the kids were suddenly gone.
Ugh. Every team should do a promotion like that, quite honestly. Especially with ice cream and kids.
We had one this year with the Lugnuts. And by this year, I mean 2019. Tyler Parsons is our GM, and he created Purge Night, as in, based off the movies, when a siren sounded, all the food in the ballpark except beer was free for that half inning. So everyone knew. You never knew when that siren was going to sound, but the second that it sounded, you go and you could get anything that you wanted.
Wow.
And until that half inning was over. So you just rooted that the half inning wouldn't end in a hurry. And of course, in the Purge half inning, Ryan Gold hit a grand slam. It was the coolest grand slam watched by the fewest amount of people.
That's amazing. Good for him.
So, grand slam. 1929, they first applied it to the bases loaded home run. And Mick, I agree with you. And by the way, Bill King, have you ever heard the argument made that he's the greatest football broadcaster of all time?
Yeah, I have. He's known more for
King.
football than baseball. That's why I think it took him a long time to get into the Hall of Fame for baseball. But I'm going to tell you right now, Ken Korak's book got him in, which is
yes. Cool. He had the ability, and man, am I trying to work on this. Football, basketball, baseball, they always say keep your eye on the ball, watch the ball. Bill King had the ability to see what was going on everywhere else on the field. So he knew when a guy was cutting open to the rim in basketball, he could see the entire court. In football, he could see the receivers, he could see he could just see everybody.
Shout out to Ken Korak. I guess he's watching.
Hope so.
Great book, by the way.
And on that note, shall we wrap things up for this week?
Let's shall.
Right. Mick Gillispie, Kevin Reichard, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Thank you for keeping us company on the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. Check out ballparkdigest.com, and we'll check in with you next week.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mick.